Hello everyone, Justin with Deep Dive Stocks here, and today we're not doing a market dive, but instead, in the spirit of the weekend, we're going to slow things down a little bit and look at some more advanced interpretations and uses of LDPM and LDPS. Namely, at the end of the video, I hope that you have learned to recognize bear traps and bull traps while using LDPM and LDPS. For this quick little chat that we're having, I just went through ES Futures, Bitcoin, and Ethereum, just kind of looking for pretty prototypical examples of these bear traps and bull traps so that we can get a look for them, get a feel for them, and know what they look like in the wild, as well as how to navigate them in the wild. So let's get started, I guess, right? So the first thing is, what is, I guess, a bull trap and a bear trap? We probably all know, but to nail down the definition, we can say that a bull trap is a condition where the price appreciation is not expected to last. And in fact, unlike normal sort of oscillations with the price in a bull trap, for instance, you expect the price to appreciate, but then to rapidly return back to where its price originally was and to continue back downwards. So the idea is that the current bullish liquidity and flow is short-lived, temporary, and likely something that should be entered and exited before the carpet is pulled out from under you, right? And then bear trap is the opposite, where you have the price is appreciating, but then we get a depreciation in price. And as opposed to regular sort of up and down of the price, as things tend to do, this bear trap will see price depreciate, but then rapidly unwind to the upside, likely, I just lost every train of thought in my head. So the price depreciates, but it's a bear trap. So we expect that the price at some point is going to rapidly reverse back to the initial point of when that bear trap started, and then continue back upwards, right? So again, these ideas of these traps are just that they're traps. So a bull trap is one that looks on, for all intents and purposes, especially with some traditional TA, to be, the start of a bull run, only to break some ankles and to fall back down. And the bear trap is the opposite, right? Everything, especially with traditional TA, looks like the price should go down. So, you pile into the short, and then it turns out that it was just JK. And the price bounces right back up. The cool thing is that we can actually identify these instances, or, to be mathematical, we can identify these areas of high probability of bull trap or bear trap-ness. And this fits nicely within the current paradigm that we've been using LDPM and LDPS with, where we're still going to anticipate that leapfrog style behavior where if we're bullish LDPS, we expect movement to the next support, to the next resistance. And then if we're bearish, then we expect movement down to that support. And then if we maintain bearish, go down, or if we maintain bullish, we go up to the next resistance, so on and so forth. So we still maintain that hopping, that leapfrog sort of behavior. But the identifying the bear and the bull traps can help us, add an additional layer towards our expectations with regards to what we expect the price to do when they reach those resistances or supports. So far, we've mostly just been talking about it in terms of if LDPS is bullish or if LDPS is bearish, and then using those interpretations to guide our expectations with regards to what happens when we meet those resistances and those supports. And that will still hold true, but now we can just add an additional piece of data if we want to sort of help lean the cards ever more in one direction or the other. So that is the benefit of, what we're going to do today. And again, the benefit is that it just gives you a more comprehensive view of what's going on, I think, within an equity. And it just kind of helps contextualize liquidity and the actors that are stepping into the market to transact. Because I think one of the important aspects of LDPM and LDPS that I don't know if other indicators lack it or if there is, I think it mostly has to do with this. Sorry, outside music. Never heard that song. But I think there with a lot of the misconceptions that occur with liquidity, I think there are some carryover or knock-on effects when it comes to understanding what LDPM and LDPS do, namely that there's this idea that liquidity can be measured by things other than what are happening in the market. So a common example, for instance, is you'll see people will measure liquidity or claim to measure liquidity by using the bid-ask spread, or they'll use the order book depth. And while these are all fine and dandy, they don't actually tell you really much about liquidity. The term I use is that a lot of those studies represent potential liquidity. So when you're looking at the order book depth, you're looking at how things might transact or which forces the market or which conditions the market might find itself in with regards to the order book if spot moves to that relevant spot in the order book. But it really doesn't tell you about what's happening currently right here in the market, which is actually the kind of the only liquidity that anyone should be interested in, I think. And so with that, I think there comes this idea when using LDPM and LDPS as liquidity measuring devices that they have insight maybe into these lesser effective means of measuring liquidity, which isn't the case. LDPM and LDPS distinctly only look at the things that are occurring. They're not interested in things that might occur, could occur, should occur. It's only looking at the forces that are entering into the market right now and the behavior of those forces. So with that, it can at first seem difficult to try to devise a way to not look at the potential future if you're not looking at the potential liquidity, but you don't need potential liquidity. You simply just need to look at how the market is behaving right now and then try to piece together the clues to form a narrative to understand the entirety of the liquidity flow or structure in the market. And so with that, we can use LDPM and LDPS against each other to discern if the current behavior in a given equity is indicative of longer term growth, for instance, in the case of a bull trap, or longer term downside in the case of a bear trap, without needing to extend ourselves into the whimsical world of could, shoulds, and ifs. Especially when it comes to measuring your data. It's fine to have some of those woulds, coulds, and ifs in your outlook derived from the data. I think that's the whole kind of shtick behind the human mind. But when you're collecting your data, I think you need to be very careful which data you're collecting. And so LDPM and LDPS are distinctly only collecting data on things that have occurred and have had an effect, not might would occurred in the future. So with that, I guess it's a long enough diatribe into a little bit of the philosophy of LDPM and LDPS, but just keep that in mind as we go forward, because it is a unique situation, I think, when you confine yourself to, I don't want to say reality, but when you confine yourself to really only looking at what is occurring in the market at the time of measurement. So all right, let's get started. Enough of that random philosophy. I don't even know if that was philosophy, but random little rant out of the way. So I guess the main point is, how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we find bear traps and bull traps? the answer has a little bit of a backstory required. So first, let's look at LDPM. We know it, we love it. As I've said in the other videos, but my default loadout is 5, 6, and 7 with 144, 377, and 610 being the 5, 6, and 7. These, I think, give a really nice overview of the behavior without the hyper-reactivity of the lower order LDPMs, although those lower order LDPMs, some prefer them. I do know quite a few LDPM users who, they actually are kind of inverse me, so they really enjoy the more reactionary LDPMs. And that does have its benefits. We'll talk in later videos about some of the patterns you can note with those more reactive, smaller order LDPMs. But for today, we're going to keep LDPM in its my personal default state, so 144, 377, and 610. And then we have the LDPM 5, the blue line, the yellow line being LDPM 6, and the LDPM L7 being the orange line. And then we have LDPS here unbalanced as usual. LDPS detail amount is full. We do declarative. That just determines how the text output is. And so up until now, everything has been the same. We've added LDPM, we've added LDPS, and say this, and then so it pops up on the chart, and then say this is what we see. If we look at this in the sort of process that we've been looking at this with, if we just do what we've been doing, right, we see that we started with this bearish liquidity, downside is expected. We moved to this bullish liquidity, so now we know we're going to move at least to that next resistance. It moved over with bullish liquidity, didn't need a little bit of a test, but again, as long as the liquidity remains bullish, we know we're going to reach that next resistance. And then it looks like on the crossover attempt of the resistance at LDPM L6, it failed, bearish liquidity returned, and indeed we fell. And then the rest kind of follows. We had that appreciation, another move up, so on and so forth. But I want to focus our attention on here, in this little area, because in particular I would like to take note that LDPM 5 is below LDPM 6, which is below LDPM 7. This is a bearish, am I going to be able to write it? A bearish LDPM stack. So LDPM has its own bullish and bearish stacks. And we haven't really talked about this because it ultimately doesn't really change the streamlined view of using LDPM and LDPS with that, hopping up and down. But it does start to paint some more detail for us when we start doing more advanced studies like looking for Bulltraps and Beartraps. So here it is useful to know if your LDPM is in a bullish stack or a bearish stack. And what really determines that is just the orientation of the LDPMs. And because in this case, the 5 is 144, which is less than 6, which is 377 is more than 144, and 7 is more than 6, and 610 is more than 377. So the 5 is less than 6 in terms of its order. 6 is less than 7, and 7 is the highest, so on and so forth. So the point being is if we were to make this 1579 or 1597, then 5 is no longer the lowest order LDPM. And so we just have to keep that in mind when we're looking for those bearish and bullish stacks. Because in the grand scheme of things, the bearish is when the low is low and the high is high. Versus if we go to this, where this is a bull stack, because we have 5, 6, and then 7. It's a goofy looking 7. Looks like Darth Plagueis. And so this is a LDPM has a bullish stack because 5 is above 6, which is above 7. So the first thing in identifying potential bull or bear traps is we need to identify the LDPM stack present. And so here we see, again, low is below high, so this is a bearish stack. This becomes important because as soon as we see this bullish LDPS liquidity, inside of this bearish LDPM stack, this now tells us that LDPM and LDPS are having conflicting outlooks. They're having conflicting views. LDPM's view, which is to tell us sort of to cruise along those, liquidity highways or those liquidity paths, is telling us that things are upside down, right? The ship is upside down. We're likely going down. It's a bearish LDPM stack. LDPS, though, on the other hand, is saying, okay, but we're picking up right now information that says that this is quite a bullish run, right? So this price appreciation is being fueled by genuine bullish activity, whether that be an eager bid or an aggressive bid or maybe an organic bid, but an absent ask, what have you. But it looks like there is true, genuine oomph behind this price appreciation. So now we have a little bit of a mix-up between our two signals. And this mix-up or this contention or this disagreement is what, by definition, creates the bull trap. So in short, if we have this bearish stack for LDPM, but inside of this stack or even beyond, if LDPM LDPM is bearish, but LDPS starts printing bullish candles, the expectation is that this is a bull trap. So that means that price is still going to bounce up as expected, but every time we get to that resistance, it's going to be much greater chance, even if LDPS is looking healthy, that the price is going to revert. And again, note that price not only reverts, but as we said, kind of in our general definition of what a bull trap is that it reverts back to below where it was. So it sort of rapidly, and by rapid we mean here just in the span of, I'll say one candle, but so we've fallen below where we were when the bull trap started, and we continue down lower. And that is the quintessential hallmark of bull traps and bear traps, especially when you locate them using LDPM and LDPS. And that's kind of it. So just to quickly recap, we have, when we look at the chart and we have LDPM and LDPS on the chart, and we want to start looking into some more advanced pattern recognition. We want to start developing maybe a little bit more, maddening thoughts in our heads. Because again, you don't necessarily need this information, because ultimately, if we were here, the difference really is like what happens here, right? So if we're here and we're seeing this, there's been times, I think, in the previous videos when you've seen me point out the idea that price has been using LDPM as a support after this kind of breakaway behavior. And I think if memory serves, if you go back and watch some of those, it's going to be because almost invariably that I'm pointing out potential bull traps. And that's because, again, while we do have this bullish liquidity per LDPS, which is telling us that there is a true and genuine oomph in the market right now pushing the price up, we see that LDPM is largely still maintaining its course. It's not rectifying itself and trying to put itself into a bullish stack where 5 would be above 6, would be above 7. It's content with its bearish stack. So there is this disagreement. So here is really, these moments are really when that sort of information and insight help. Because again, the traditional outlook is that we're going to bounce, right? As long as we keep our bullish outlooks alive, and as long as LDPS, so as long as LDPS maintains its bullish interpretations. But when we start price stalling, which is another thing that we've seen, and when we don't see that rapid movement through those resistances, everyone's in the moment, you start doubting, is this resistance going to hold? is LDPS? Is the bullish force that LDPS is measuring, is it going to continue? Is it going to hang around for this, to digest through this resistance to move back up to LDPM L7? In the moment, there's a lot of questions that occur through the, data purveyor's mind. And the benefit of identifying that this is a potential bull trap is that ever more so, the answer tends towards no, right? So as we're stagnating in price, it sort of becomes a be bullish or don't, right? And the moment that it's not being bullish, then it's not bullish. And in the setting of a bull trap, then we know our expectations are almost immediately that price is going to rapidly revert back to the price of where the trap started. And that sort of, I think, if we were, say we had gone long here, and we recognize that this is a bull trap, and now we see prices stagnating, that sort of paints the field a little differently, right? Now we can start maybe downsizing, maybe start preparing to exit, even though LDPS is still telling us that the current forces at play are bullish. We know that in totality of the data, LDPM is not buying it, and this is looking much more like a potential bull trap than a true and genuine sustained bullish movement. And so now we start really doubting these moments when we're hitting this resistance, price is stagnating, and you start sprinkling on the fact that you're in a bull trap already. And I think the expectation, or at least in terms of what the practical trader might do, it becomes a little bit more clear, which is namely, you might want to either start downsizing, or maybe this isn't the time to go long. Maybe you might want to at least wait for a minute or two. PM just moves. LDPM made the decision for spot. It moved very nicely up. And then we return to bearish. We're now below where the bull trap started, and so on and so forth. And so that's the gist. That's kind of the gist of the whole thing. And we see that this is a pattern that repeats, right? So here's another bull trap. Here's another bull trap. We don't quite get into the like LDPMs, but there's another one. There's another one. And as long as this remains, here's another one, right? And this is a really good one. So because we have that bearish for, 5 is below 7. But LDPS is printing bullish prints. We know, okay, price is likely going to go up, but the chances of successfully crossing over resistance is very low. And so any kind of failure to move above that resistance, and if we get price stagnation, and if we start getting less bearish or less bullish prints, we need to be hyper vigilant that the bull trap, in this case, is failing and will quickly and rapidly result on continued downside. So that's that. So let's look. I think there was another one. So here's another one on Bitcoin I found. I think this is like February 2nd. It's 45-minute. Again, I was just kind of like moving through looking for good examples, but we see here this bearish. We get this big bullish print, right? But notice as that's occurring, this is LDPM 5, LDPM 6, LDPM 7. So we're in a bearish LDPM stack, but we've got this insurgence of bullish liquidity. So we know we're going to hit the resistance. And again, this is remember on the chart we just saw where I talked about sort of like, seeing that very distinct movement through those resistances, right? So big candle, 2.26, big candle right through, 2.18. But then as we start approaching the next resistance, we start faltering. We don't have the oomph behind it anymore, right? And the idea is that this is really because up until, here, the market was, momentum or inertia was moving everything down, and yet now a player has stepped into the market. And this goes back to my rant about like order depth and order books, because things only matter until they matter, and they only matter if they're in the market. It doesn't matter if they're not in the market. You can sit on the sidelines of any game and talk about what you can or will or like won't do, but it really only matters what you do. And so here we have, it looks like someone steps in, and then things start to falter. So now we're like, okay, well, maybe this force, this bid that's walked into the market is no longer pleased with what's happening. And on top of that, we know that this is a little bit more likely because we have this bull trap. So, and we see that it resists, and then it kind of just putters out. This is a less dramatic ending to this bull trap. But I just wanted to highlight how we, you gotta, whenever you find these bull traps, you just kind of want to keep an eye out, especially as they approach those resistances. Because it very much so may be that this is just someone rapidly trying to exit a short, or trying to not be margin called because they've collateralized some Bitcoin somewhere else. Who knows? But it's a way, the interplay between LDPM and LDPS help us understand if this is sort of a true market phenomenon. Is this a true sort of paradigm change in the market? Or does this look like a more of a one-off instance, or maybe some random person coming into the market and doing something? And so when they're in a disagreement and we can identify that bull trap in this case, it does lend more credence to the idea that this is going to be sort of a short-lived burst of activity, and downside should very much so resume at some point. As soon as the oomph behind this bull trap oomphs out. So, all right. Then I wanted to show, we've seen these, but we've definitely seen these already in the previous videos, but these are bear traps. So as we said, so here we have 5, then over here at least to be perfect, 5, 6, 7. So this is a bullish stack for LDPM. And then we have this introduction of bearish liquidity. So we know we're going to test the support, we do fall through it, and then the expectation is that we're going to go and test support. But while this is occurring, we also know that this is indeed a bear trap. So we should expect movement, kind of, you don't want it to be at any time, but here we see with this, these trap examples, it definitely can be, right? So in other words, I should say not any time, but it can occur before we get to that support. You can see this turnaround. And that's namely because it's these bear traps, right? So maybe someone's coming in, maybe someone's profit taking, and so they're not really there to influence or move the market per se, but maybe they're just trying to rapidly exit a position. And so in the moment, it is producing these bearish prints. But overall, when we compare the relationship between LDPM and LDPS, we see that it doesn't have the hallmarks of something that's going to withstand, the test of time. And we see, so, this continues, we go up, and then we actually start seeing this inversion of LDPM as bearish liquidity enters, right? And so then by here, we're in a true bear stack, because LDPM 5 is below 7. That's kind of like because it gets a little messy sometimes when you incorporate, like if you have a lot of in-between LDPMs. So as a rule of thumb, I usually just do like the highest one and the lowest one. And so what's interesting though is we see from here, this is, tentatively bullish, but as soon as that LDPM crosses below LDPM 5 crosses below LDPM 7, immediately what was once kind of like just this standard bullish liquidity now becomes a bull trap. And so as it rests, and then it turns bearish, and then goes immediately and falls through. And for a brief second, for here, this is a bear trap, but we see as, again, LDPM inverts, it just becomes bearish again, and then it goes bullish. This is a bull trap, hits the resistance, fails, hits the resistance again during a bull trap, fails, and proceeds to the downside. And so that, I just wanted to introduce this idea to you guys. It can be super helpful, but don't, it's something that has prevalence. It has foresight, I should say, identifying these patterns. But if it gets too in the weeds, if it's too, because LDPMs can be pretty crazy and wonky sometimes, always just, go back to the default of what is LDPS? Is it bullish? Is it bearish? And where is the nearest resistance or support? And then from there, if the analysis sounds and feels sound, then that's when it's time to incorporate, okay, now let's look at the LDPM stack. Are we going to, in this case, for instance, are we about to approach this resistance in a larger setting of a bear trap, right, or a bull trap? And then that's sort of, adds a bit more granularity to the positioning or the sizing or the hypothetical thoughts that run through people's minds when they look at indicators. So yeah, so that's just another layer. There's plenty more. There's a lot more patterns to look at. So this will just be one of many in your toolkit. In later videos, we'll look at the aggressive bid cascades, aggressive ask cascades, along with the scoop pattern and the crashing wave pattern, all of which you've seen before. So I don't know if you want to go back through the videos and take a peek, see if you can identify them from their names alone. Let's see if we can. I don't want to spend too much time on it and give this the secret away. But you also need those patterns you do need the lower order LDPMs, but we'll see if we can see. No, I don't see any. So this is actually one. So keep this one in mind. This is an aggressive bid cascade. And coincidentally, it's a aggressive bid cascade. I told you you've seen it before because this is the same pattern we've kind of been seeing. We saw it on Bitcoin, we saw it on ES futures, and now you know the official name for it. It's the aggressive bid cascade. And in later videos, we will go in more detail about the aggressive bid cascade. But for now, I hope this was helpful as you continue your journey through LDPM and LDPS. And yeah, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. Feel free to reach out on Twitter. You can email me, all the standard forms of communication. If you want a video about a particular topic or event that's occurred in the market for us to go back and look at in terms of liquidity, definitely let me know in the comments, or again, email, Twitter, But for now, I think that is all I have for you. I don't think I have anything else. We went through the bull traps, the bear traps. We saw 3 examples of them. And so, yeah. All right, guys. That will be me. That'll be all for today. I'm Justin with Deep Dive Stocks, and I will see you guys later. Have a good weekend. See you guys. Bye.